do. Look down at the ground with a soft gaze if you'd like to keep them open. But just focus your attention inward. And then let your eyes softly open and just gently let them roam around the room and look at the faces in the room. In an inclusive space, people feel valued. In an inclusive space, people feel like they have something valuable to bring into the room. They feel like others in the room are going to receive the value that they have. It's a culture where people value one another. It's a place, a culture where people value one another's cultural differences. So what is it that supports you in feeling valued? Because if we can see that in each other, and sometimes it's helpful to be able to like share it, then we can learn even more about creating those spaces. So you're going to take a minute to talk to a partner again about I feel valued when. And you'll each only have like 1 minute. So what is it that helps you feel valued? I have a hard time in some of those group processes where you go around and share. For me personally, when you just go around and nobody like says anything, I just feel like I'm like sharing out into a vacuum. But a simple little like, thank you.
Thanks for sharing that.
If you get somebody's pronouns wrong and they correct you, say thank you instead of I'm sorry, because I'm sorry forces them to tell you that it's okay, and it might not be okay. So just say thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's a good one.
Okay, good.
All right. So I want to move through a few of these tips that Lucia is offering to us. So tips for designing an inclusive environment. Practice introspection. Know your culture. Know your biases. Know what are your dominant or dominating identities. Where on that wheel did you have an identity that's a dominant identity? What are your personality traits? This is where like regular self-reflection as a facilitator is golden. If it's the only thing you do is regularly self-reflecting, you're going to be so much more powerful than if you're like reading all the books about all the methodologies and blah, 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 that kind of stuff. Learn other cultural norms, like we talked about. Do I have a solid, so some of these I'm reading off are Lucia's words. Do I have a solid understanding of cultural norms within groups of people that are different than me? Did I develop this understanding from personal relationships or from reading and study? Am I actively building personal and professional relationships with people of different cultures? I can't tell you, and if this has happened with anybody in this room, I'm sharing this with love, but the number of times that I've had conversations about race, particularly with people in power, and they're like, I know I studied this in graduate school. So, like, understanding cultural norms, where is that coming from? Relationships, personal experiences, immersing yourself in other cultural experiences. Well, I think one of the things is that there's a lot of things that white folks we say to each other that we know better than we say this.
No, they say it to me.
And sometimes we don't.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Really? All the time.
So I know we know a lot of things like that. This was just a little interruption. Okay, so the next one, relationship. And in general, I don't like to point them out because I like them to be discreet. Like you just think things are moving along and you don't know that I just interrupted you. Relationships are everything and they take time. Effective communication is best ensured when we understand one another's cultural norms. Truly understanding each other's cultural norms can only be achieved by building cross-cultural relationships, which happen over time. We sometimes may assume that we have deep understanding of different cultural norms within our community, We've been familiarized through media or study, but the only effective way to do so involves building relationships over time. And study is still good. Books and media are wonderful to help us learn, and relationships are everything. And we're gonna go into this more in a little bit, but relationships on teams, relationships with participants, relationships between participants, all of that is golden for like actual change and actually creating an inclusive environment. I think one of the reasons that folks feel comfortable in the ways that they do in this room is because of how many pre-existing relationships were in this room. If we were all strangers, all not knowing each other, I don't think that there would be the level of like yumminess that flows in and out of this room. The relationships make all the difference. And then use your power to make it more inclusive. One of my like facilitation, deep respect, Matthew Williams, who y'all have heard me talk about before, he always talks about the who's having to commute. So whose comfort is in this room? So right now, like just on a really practical level, if you are comfortable sitting for a long time, we are favoring you right now in this class. If your body needs to be moving, we have not centered your needs during this class right now. Whose perspectives are centered? So who is the like kind of general emphasis on the room is to make this room work for certain people, and for other people, they have to commute. So he, as a black man, talks about the commute that he has to make in so many of these rooms that are all white rooms because they're centering this white dominant culture. And what is the commute mentally? What is the commute emotionally? What is the commute language-wise? What is the commute temperament? Like, there's all of these commutes. So as a facilitator, whose perspectives get to be heard, I have power in that. So when I'm in a room and 5 hands shoot up and 4 of them are white folks and 1 of them is a black woman, I'm very intentional, not about whose hand went up first and what's the like fair way to call on people, but I'm gonna favor the voices that aren't normally centered in this room. I have power what I do with the mic. I have power on who I call. I have power on who I choose to interrupt and who I don't choose to interrupt. We often mean well, but often tend to assume that an inclusive design stops at simply inviting people of color or people from other non-dominant groups as participants. While it's important to have these people present and others who are also directly impacted by an important social issue, a meaningful and inclusive experience for participants goes so far beyond that. A lot of the work to ensure true inclusiveness is done in the design process. During the design process, we must think beyond just filling seats based on racial diversity. Culture should be considered as well. Yeah, Nicole.
I'm sorry.
Did you want to say something?
No, I was smoking. I'm allergic to something.
Somebody's got a cat.
Yeah, I don't have a cold.
I just had a question like kind of bubbling up as I was looking at our norms when we came in, and like how do you, like it seems like the norms are coming out of a lens as well, and how do you create an inclusive space where like my norm sometimes for like being emotional or like using my hands or being really loud is not accepted in that environment? Like, so I'm feeling like I've been in situations like that, or like a woman, like I'm a northern woman in the South, and I've had to learn how to be different in spaces because in the South, like, I don't know, women are shown certain ways. So
Yeah.
I'm feeling like a little unclear about that, because if I, like we did for the convening, or you guys kind of created these norms that people just sort of agreed to, and I've done that for classes too, with some interaction and like, can you change this or want to adjust it? But it's feeling a little bit like sticky for me right now.
So some people choose not to use group culture. I talk about group culture because I don't feel like we can actually create norms or we can actually make real agreements. Can't really whether people are going to follow the guidelines. So some people choose not to do that for that. We're not going to make Like, I'm not gonna tell you that this is a place that's safe for everyone, where everyone can be authentic, where you can be your full self, bring your whole self into this room. While I would love the idea of that, I don't know that I actually want all of your full self in this room right now. And so that's where, like, the fact that this is a practice field, and what are we agreeing to practice? And so the difference between, if we give you a group culture, like we did at the convening, because we didn't really have time and we thought we're gonna just give it for those few hours, whereas this class where we're together for 3 months, we created it together because we want time to like grow into it and feel it. So like that's what your group needs to inquire into. So that would be a great, you know, if we were choosing to make this, when you get into your design teams, which is where we're moving next, you really want to look at what that group culture is. And if your emotionality needs to have a place in that, then it's really important to name that. Because if your design team is going to be working on an initiative together for the next 3 months, like you want to know the parts of you that are really important to show up. And my sense is it's a practice space. If we want to make it a practice space, let's be explicit and intentional about what we're practicing. And know that like we're going to practice that. Does that kind of?
Yeah, that answers the part for here, but I'm thinking about it for something external to here, and I'm just not sure what I've created is like guesswork, basically.
Yeah, I mean, to me, consent and like what people are actually able to succeed at that's one of my core questions. So I'm not gonna tell you that we're doing something that I don't have, I'm gonna try not to, I make mistakes on this, that I don't have your consent to really do. Something happened, I'm not gonna be able to think of it right now, but there was a situation that I was facilitating a group and they gave feedback. We never actually consented to that process, and I was like, that's true, y'all did not consent to that process, and that was problematic. So that's one piece, and then also, you know, sometimes I frame it as invitation. So like, what's the long term? How long is this group invested in each other? And if it's a long-term investment, relationships are everything and they take time. So take the time to do the work to create the culture that's gonna actually serve what the purpose of this group being together is, rather than moving on because we got important conversations to have, but meanwhile nobody's showing up authentically because blah, 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 all pieces. All right, so if we could take a really short bio break.